So today is very exciting. Not as Course in Miracle lessons go. I'm not sure which ones have been that exciting. So I believe lesson 27 is I'm determined to see. I'm determined to see. Yeah, it's a nice one. We're going to do two today, lesson 20, because 27 and 28 are like a pair, I think. They go together. And so I'm determined to see. So now there was a line, I've written it down. It gives vision priority among your desires. It gives vision priority among your desires. So this is really, really helpful. So as we were talking, you know, what you're seeing when you're in the ego is just a projection. You're in the illusion. So you're just seeing all your fears and your resentments and all your separated thinking being projected, and you're in a world of separation, very, very limited, and possibly full of fear and guilt, the fear of reprisals or attack. So all of that is in the illusion. So what the Course is asking us to do, I'm determined to see. You're determined to have spiritual vision. So to see, you could say, to see in truth, to see without any of the masking of the separation that the ego has created by indulging or being interested in all of its payoffs. So it's like a prayer, you know, I'm determined to see. I'm determined to see, you know, this cup in truth. I'm determined to see that chair in truth. You see, I'm determined to see. So it's like, it's almost saying that what you're seeing with your human eyes is wrong. You know, there is another vision beyond what the human eyes and the interpretation of the ego and the world, it casts you into the world of separation. Past that, there is a vision which is not based on what I'd call the eye's perception. For me, the ego, when you're in perception, it's like your ego has created an illusory world of separation and limitation and fear, a world of this and that. So that's my favourite line from this. And lesson 28. Oh yeah, here we go. You see, it says, you see a lot of separations, you see a lot of separate things about you, which really means you are not seeing at all. You see a lot of separate things around you, which means you're not seeing at all. So that was one of my favourite lines from Listen. So if you see separation, if you see separate things, you're not seeing at all. Which is kind of like linking into the first lesson, the other lesson, you know, I'm determined to see. So if I see, for example, that I'm here and that the cup is over there, then I'm seeing separation. Or if I see that I'm different to that person sitting on the chair over there, then and I sense separation, you know, it means I'm not seeing, I'm not having vision. You see, so any form, or if I'm seeing separation in time, then I'm in some form of separation. Or if I'm seeing separation in terms of distance, you know, then I'm not really seeing. I'm not in the truth, the absolute truth. You know, if I'm a body here and you're a body there, that's a form of separation. So I'm not in the truth of the holy vision. You know, holy mean oneness. You know, beyond any form of separation. Beyond any form of separation with time, beyond any form of separation with location, beyond any form of separation, because every thought that is hooked into is a form of separation and limitation. So I'm not really seeing. I'm looking through the projections of my ego, see? So that's a lovely line from there. So the light you will see in any one of them is the same light you will see in them all. You are making a commitment to withdraw your preconceived ideas about the table. It has something to show you, something beautiful and clean and of infinite value, full of happiness and joy. It's beautiful. So, you know, so when you can see the table and there's no separation, and you can see the plant and there's no separation, and you can see another human body and there's no separation, then there will be a unified feeling of unity or oneness or stillness, where there is no this and that. You know, it's like a field. It's like you're connecting to a field of stillness or love. And all the thoughts which have hooked into all the ideas of separation, the idea of separate bodies, the idea of thinkingness being a separate thing, which is also observed, the ideas of time, all of that is gone, and one is now experiencing something that is timeless, spaceless, and beyond any this and that. So that's my sort of intro to it, but we'll read the lessons, both lesson number 27 and 28 together. And we read about a paragraph or so and then pass it round so we get the full take on it. But they are lovely lessons, and lesson 27 is more, I think. Oh yeah, I did want to share a little bit about lesson 27, which is above all I want to see, because it sort of says, we'll read it now, but we should go every 15 minutes at lesson 27, to every, and I thought that's quite early, and I thought, yeah, that's what really had a major impact on my life, is that the regularity of doing it. And I sort of joke that the Holy Spirit told me to get this Casio watch to perform the functions that wasn't necessary for my spiritual development.
So what would you do every 15 minutes?
Well, I do it now every 5 minutes.
Reading
doing.
Determined to see. I think that's what.
Yeah, I'm determined to see. We're going to read it now. It says you can go down to every 15 minutes. But it says, every half an hour or whatever it is. But it's just the thing of just regularly throughout the day connecting to Source. Use the lesson as a conduit to connect to, above all, now, after 7 years of doing the lessons every day, for me the lessons are just hints to quickly take you into that oneness, stillness beyond time. It's like my watch beeps. I'll just remember the lesson, because I am tuned into the course by doing the lesson. For me, like I share, I think you have the 12-step angels, which look after all the addiction angels, and then you have the Course in Miracle angels. And I found, like when I started doing the Course in Miracles, I used to get so many, like bumping. I mean, even the thing with how I got into this group, just by doing the Course in Miracles, it's like you're probably half linked into everyone who's doing the Course in Miracles. You sort of bump into them, or you sort of. We help each other, kind of like a family. I wonder. So.
Sorry, can I just say? I think that's that lesson is quite useful, and I can see why it says every 15 minutes, because I think it's a very important lesson, because you can be in any situation. I mean, I can find myself, for example, in a work situation, and the moment I feel the judgment is coming up or whatever the other person is doing, by just repeating, I'm determined to see. Just saying, you're connecting to the truth of what that person is, or I'm determined to see things differently, which I often use. But actually, it's quite a useful one, because the moment you cut yourself, it's a short one as well.
Yes.
You're determined to see. You kind of almost like you're removing slightly yourself from that ego state, and you kind of more back into the truth. So I can see why. Yeah. It says, that early, every 15 minutes. Never done it in 15 minutes, but I think it's very useful to remember, when or within yourself as well. I find it very, when you find yourself, being in the ego mind, just keep repeating, I'm determined to see.
It's a beautiful lesson, yeah.
Yeah.
And it also, of course, means you're not seeing.
Why would you do it?
I'm determined to see this mug, you see. I'm determined to see this mug. So there you go. So you're not seeing the mug. At least while you think there's a you that's seeing the mug over there, you're not seeing it.
I think it's easier to see the mug in a way. I find it much more difficult if somebody really bugs you.
Oh yeah.
Then it's more difficult. Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, that takes a lot more work.
Yeah.
A lot more work. That always reminds me, when I have a difficult personality to deal with, is watching the Mel Gibson film, The Passion of the Christ, and I because there was some gruesome, gory bits in there, but I just edited it out, my favourite bits in there. And there was like this lovely guy that looks like Jesus, I think, to me. And he was saying, you know, what use is it just to love people who are your friends? You know, and what merit is there in that? Of course, you have to love your enemies. So whenever I get a difficult personality, it's like, of course, it's easy to love your friends.
Yes.
So it's a challenge then to get there. Okay, so who wants to start reading today? Would you like to start?
Okay, what do I read to?
You can just read a paragraph or so and pass it on.
Lesson 27?
Lesson 27, yeah.
Okay. Above all else, I want to see. Today's idea expresses something stronger than mere determination. It gives vision priority among your desires. You may feel hesitant about using the idea on the grounds that you are not sure you really mean it. This does not matter. The purpose of today's exercises is to bring the time when the idea will be wholly true and a little nearer.
There may be a great temptation to believe that some sort of sacrifice is being asked of you when you say you want to see above all else. If you become uneasy about the lack of reservation involved, added, vision has no cost to anyone. If fear of loss still persists, add further, it can only bless.
The idea for today needs many repetitions for maximum benefit. It should be used at least every half hour and more if possible. You might try for every 15 or 20 minutes. It's recommended that you set a definite time interval for using the idea when you wake or shortly afterwards, and attempt to adhere to it throughout the day. It will not be difficult to do this, even if you are engaged in conversation or otherwise occupied at the time. You can still repeat one short sentence to yourself without disturbing anything.
The real question is, how often will you remember? How much do you want today's idea to be true? Answer one of these questions and you have answered the other. You will probably miss several applications, and perhaps quite a number. Do not be disturbed by this, but do try to keep on your schedule from then on. If only once during the day you feel that you were perfectly sincere while you were repeating today's idea, you can be sure that you have saved yourself many years of effort.
We'll carry on to the next lesson.
It's a long pass.
Pass, okay. Okay. I'll do the first paragraph. Okay. Lesson 28. Above all else, I want to see things differently. Today we are really giving specific application to the idea for yesterday. In these practice periods, you will be making a series of definite commitments. The question of whether you will keep them in the future is not our concern here. If you are willing at least to make them now, you have started on the way to keeping them, and we are still at the beginning.
You may wonder why it is important to say, for example, above all else, I want to see this table differently. In itself, it is not important at all. Yet, what is by itself? And what does in itself mean? You see a lot of separate things about you, which really means you are not seen at all. You either see or not. When you have seen one thing differently, you will see all things differently. The light you will see in any one of them is the same light you will see in all of them.
When you say above all, I want to see this table differently, you are making a commitment to withdraw your preconceived ideas about the table and open up your mind to what it is and what it is for. You are not defining it in past terms, you are asking what it is, rather than telling it what it is. You are not binding the meaning to your tiny experience of tables, nor are you limiting its purpose to your little personal thoughts.
You will not question what you have already defined. And the purpose of these exercises is to ask the question and receive answers. In saying, above all else, I want to see this table differently, you are committing yourself to seeing. It is not an exclusive moment, it is a commitment that applies to the table just as much as to anything else, neither more nor less. 5.
You could in fact gain vision from just that table if you would withdraw all your own ideas from it and look upon it with a completely open mind. It has something to show you, something beautiful and clean and of infinite value, full of happiness and hope. Hidden under all your ideas about it is its real purpose, the purpose it shares with all the universe. Number 6.
Number 6. In using the table as a subject for applying the idea for today, you are therefore really asking to see the purpose of the universe. You'll be making the same request of each subject that you use in the practice periods, and you're making a commitment to each of them to let its purpose be revealed to you, instead of placing your own judgment upon it.
We will have 6 2-minute practice periods today, in which the idea for the day is stated first and then applied to whatever you see about you. Not only should the subjects be chosen randomly, but each one should be accorded accorded equal sincerity as today's idea is applied to it, in an attempt to acknowledge the equal value of them all in their contribution to your seeing.
As usual, the application should include the name of the subject your eyes happen to light on, and you should rest your eyes on it while saying, above all, I want to see this table differently. Each application should be made quite slowly and as thoughtfully as possible. There is no hurry.
Lovely.
How do we want to see things differently? Is it that we want to see them differently from just seeing them from our ego, or is that sort of what it is, from this ego-separated sense of self? Is that what your lesson's pointing to?
Yes, yeah. So it depends where you are initially, how you interpret the lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, it's very confusing. Of course, for the ego, for a beginner, the mug is the mug. Why would you pray to see it differently?
Mm-hmm.
But later on, of course, as you do the course, you start to have spiritual experience, and you start realizing that you're praying to see it differently as long as you have an ego projection that's in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, in terms of the course, I'd say it's like invoking a miracle, and you could say for holy vision to start to come into play, or vision which is beyond any form of limitation, you see. So it's at the end of the course it says, if it's done its job, you can throw the book away, because you're now in that place where there is no separation. So you no longer need to say, I'm determined to see this mug differently, or I'm determined to see this chair differently, because it's now served its purpose. You're now in the place of stillness, unity, oneness, beyond all separation and all limitation. So that's your experience now. So it'll be obvious at that point you no longer need to go around for the whole day saying, I'm determined to see things differently. Or you may do, in case you have lapses into separation.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so you might be in like pure bliss and stillness. Suddenly you see a person, and suddenly a story arises, and there's separation again. So you might then have to use that. You can use that or any other tool to get you out of the hooking in to the story that's hooking you into that. So that's that. So you interpret it as you go in your spiritual journey. You interpret it differently because of who you are and how you see things. So later, when you're more advanced, like for me, I pray for a miracle. Sometimes it's like, now it's often I'll just say the lesson. I'm not really listening to the lesson. I'm just trying to get directly to the experience. I just use it as a prop. Or if I am in experience where there's separation, I'll try and inquire into how am I in separation. I pray for a miracle to see that I feel separation from me to you differently, you see. Or I pray for a miracle to see time dragging differently. So I'll just see, I'll use it as a kind of a diagnosis to see what's been hooked in to any form of separation. Or if I'm in a pretty good state, I just say the lesson and it's like, reminder, are you in that place, beyond time, beyond space, beyond thought, you see, in the timeless. So how you do the lesson depends on where you are, really, and how you interpret it. But later on, it's like, the Course is saying, you're going to get an experience beyond form, beyond time, beyond location. So what is, so if you're hooking into any kind of form, so form is like a passing thought. Thoughts pass. Distance, something's observing changes in distance. Something observes everything that comes and goes. So if there is some hooking into all of that and there is some form of separation, then it's still valid to use the Course lesson to, if you like, give a jolt and to see it differently. The lessons are geared at what I call the non-dual level, so they're trying to unhook you from any kind of latching on to anything within the world that creates separation.
That's helpful, thank you. And the very first sentence you said something about the lessons there, something about when there's ego projection.
Did
you just say what you meant by that?
The whole world of separation comes from ego projection, or ego. So all the belief systems have created the world of separation, to the extent that so there is the belief in time, there is the belief I am a body, there is the belief in attack thoughts, or victim thoughts. There are all the dependency thoughts. So these all become layered in a huge mesh of a filter, which then creates an illusory perceptory world for. It's like I call it like the ego is like a pair of sunglasses, not sunglasses, sunglasses. You can either have the very, very black ones, where you're in a world where, because there's so many ego projections, so many ego belief systems installed within the ego, that you're in a world where you feel very, very separate. There's threat and fear at every corner. Every person is probably out to get you, and you're a victim of your own body, other bodies, and everything's going to go wrong. So that's the projections that are coming out of so many layered belief systems and then suppressed feelings. So it's just in a world of projection, you see. Whereas another person who's done a lot of spiritual work, they experience no separation, there's no this and that. There's a feeling of absolute love and trust, even beyond the word trust, of beingness and oneness, you see, just presence. So it's a totally different world depending on how much belief systems and how much projection is going on. See, so for me the whole world of separation is born by having an ego, and then the projections of that ego create a world that belief system tends to live in, you see. So if there was no separation, that would be the death of the ego, and no projections. So then you're in the realm of the presence, the beingness, the now. that which is beyond time, which is beyond an experience, which is beyond any form of separation. You know, I like to say, like, there's like a field of stillness in this room. You see, when you experience the field of stillness, it's not a this and a that. It's not a me and a you. It's not even in time. It has no distance. Always present. So it's the one the eternal constant that is always here. So that there is no projection, no ego creating a world, which is, if you like, blurring the truth from being recognized.
Thank you.
Yeah? That's what I mean by projection. It's like, every person is just seeing their own projected stuff. They live in a different world of various levels of separation and fear. And as you let go of these belief systems and these feelings, you move into more limitless expressions, and then eventually into limitless expressions of beingness, you see. So the Course says only the truth is true. So then you can live in these different worlds of projected separation, going down and down into the darker worlds.
And what about, like, sorry, I'm not talking too much, but
It's all right.
another thing to say is about sort of flipping into different aspects of this, because some of the things you said, you know, at certain levels, one can be, you know, without feeling the separation, really feeling
Yes.
the connection. So, you know, at times, you know, I've experienced this or something like this.
Yes.
And I think what's slightly disturbing me currently is then, you know, I can experience something a bit like that sometimes, or a fair bit of the time, and then just currently I feel like I've flipped into the other thing you were saying, when you're really like in the fear and in the victim and in the, and it's like, well, what's happened? Where's all that gone? That I, you know, have been feeling so in touch with so much of it. I mean, I know it's still there, but why is it that I'm buying into this other thing? It's sort of interesting is what's going on. Interesting and infuriating.
Well, you said the word. You see,
Yeah.
you know it subconsciously. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
What does it mean? It means the ego lives by interest, identification. You know, that is its glue, its life force. So when there's no interest from the ego, there's no projection, and then you're naturally in the source. You see, you're naturally in the state. So it's like the Course is purification of that which is interesting. One of the first lessons in A Course in Miracles is like the table is meaningless. You know, this bulb is meaningless. You see, that for me is what is one of the tools for clearing away ego projection, meaning. You see, if the ego, you know, like say I was at work or I had a romantic relationship, the only reason they can make, or if it's how many pounds in my bank, the only reason those things can take me, if I'm in a state of pure bliss, stillness and oneness, the only reason those things can take me out of that state is because the ego has projected meaning onto them, or interest, or given them special qualities, you see. So then, it's like you can be in a park and there's perfect oneness and beingness and bliss beyond all time. Everything is equally luminescent, you see. And then you see your boss suddenly walk across, you know, and then it's like suddenly like everything shrinks. And it's like that interest and identification is the glue that suddenly means the whole spiritual, the truth that you were living, the experience is gone. So it's like taking out the interest of identification. It's because if, let's say if it was a boss and someone else saw that person, it would have no effect. So the person hasn't got the effect or the power. It's the projected qualities onto that, you see, or the interest. Now, if you have an ego, sometimes various things can collude together, like it could be money, a person, their status, all kinds of things can come in, and they can be interesting or meaningful, you see. So then you lose the state until the meaning is released through some spiritual mechanism. It could be through the course or through self-inquiry, you know, the different feeling out the feelings. All of them will take you back to source. So when you were in those states, obviously you were in the spiritual state, and then suddenly there was an event or a thought that suddenly took interest. Suddenly there was identification, and then with that identification there was more interest, and then the thought started to propagate much more aggressively, and then it's like the experience is lost, you see. But actually so if you make those events uninteresting, then in the future that thing has not got the seeming power to stop a spiritual state. Actually, nothing stops the spiritual state unless you get hooked in or get interested in something, you see. So this is what I often share in this room. I've shared it many times, but so it's like, let's take the thing, like I was in this room, I have to say something different one day, but I've said it. But I was in the room and I was talking to the group of people that were here, and then I mentioned the traffic noise outside, and then everyone could hear the traffic noise, whereas before they didn't hear the traffic noise. So that means that when you have no interest in a phenomena, it does not exist. Yes? You've all had that. Because if you're not, there could be like huge cars going outside, and if you're not interested, you don't actually hear any noise out there, you see. And this is the same with anything. Like if you've got no interest in something, the state of peace and stillness and bliss is just ever present. Now, or if I suddenly said, if everyone was in peace and bliss because they were in the stillness in the present moment, and I said, can you hear the noise outside, and you actively tried to listen to the noise, then you'd suddenly hear the noise, you see. So, you are in a state, in the spiritual state, you are in a state where you are not giving interest or hooking into any thought or any visual image, or even hooking into the feelings that come and go. You hooked into something, you see. That's the only reason it goes. So if you do like, if you like were inquire, what is observing that? So the thing with that is like, a little bit of introduction. So the Muji thing, the self-inquiry, is that, you see, it's a little, you just think of like, if you can perceive an object out there, what is perceiving that object out there? What is the perceiver of all objects, which is not something that can come and go before it? So what about if I can perceive a pillow over there, am I the pillow, or am I that which is perceiving the pillow? So actually, I'm not the pillow, because the pillow is the object out there. So I'm the perceiver of the pillow. If I hear a noise outside, am I the noise, or am I the perceiver of the noise? The observer of the noise. I'm the observer of the noise, you see. So you peel back the layers, and there is an observer which has no interest. So then that's in the pure beingness, because the pure beingness, it's only the ego that hooks into things. Yeah. So that's, you might not be conscious of it, but when you're in a state of grace, when you're in the present, when you're in that stillness, that oneness beyond form or limitation, then that means that the ego is not hooking into any type of form. Form can be time, can be location, can be a person, can be body, any form of anything of this and that, any of the nature of this and that. If there's any hooking into, then the limitless experience starts to become limited in nature. Yeah. So right now, can I ask where you are? What are you? Are you in some kind of turmoil or anything?
I'm listening to what you're saying, and sometimes I'm flitting into thoughts of the particular situation and
Okay.
applying it there.
So, in this moment, so there's thought, there's what's happening. There's flitting into the thoughts, and then what?
And then coming back here.
Okay. So is here limited when you're under here? Does here have any form of limitation? Is it restricted or anything?
Not if I'm actually here, no.
Okay, so in this moment, is what's happening in this moment? Are you here, or are you flitting it out and it back in here?
Tiny bits of flitting out.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So let the flitting, you see, here and flitting out, here and flitting out. Okay. So something is here, which is observing the in and out. So like there's pure presence, and then there's hooking in, flitting out into the thoughts. Yes. So allow. That's okay. Allow that process to continue. So there's presence, and then hooking into thoughts. Presence. There is also something here which is observing both of those things happening, which is neither of them. Okay. So it's like there is an observer of pure presence, and then hooking into thoughts and stories, and then pure presence and hooking into stories. But there is an observer which is observing this in and out, which is not